It's here! It's finally here! So if you've seen last week's video, you might have already guessed it. I bought myself a new camera, the Panasonic GH5. The camera that I'm currently filming myself on. Now the GH5 is meant to replace my RX100 Mark IV. This is because over the past year of filming with this camera, it has proven rather unreliable. You may be wondering, why is there a sticker and a strap? That's because I've given this camera to the destroyer.
Yeah, this is my camera now.
And if you have seen last week's video, then you know that I've had a lot of problems getting Vlog installed in my new camera. But that's all water under the bridge, because my Vlog key has finally arrived. No thanks to you, Panasonic Customer Care Singapore.
No thanks to you.
So let's get this baby loaded and film some stuff. Oh, and one last thing. As I don't own any Micro Four Thirds lenses, I'll be adapting my Canon lenses on my GH5 using the Metabones Speed Booster XL. So since this is I just got Vlog unlocked in my new GH5 camera, so I need to shoot something test. I'll be testing to see how the GH5 performs in 3 categories: dynamic range, low light performance, and difficulty in getting shallow depth of field. The first test is for dynamic range. While the dynamic range isn't as good as the competition, I will say that it's not that far behind. From my tests, it certainly feels like the highlights do clip more easily than say my A7S. It's maybe half to 1 stop lower than the A7S, but that's hardly at the level of what I would call very bad. Next up is low light performance. I shot all these footage with an f2.8 lens, and never once have I ever had to go above 2000 ISO. Granted, I am using a speed booster as I mentioned before, which gives me 1 1/3 stops more light. Now you can argue that all these footage were shot in a pretty well lit street, so I guess only time will tell if I can really stretch the GH5's low light performance with the speed booster. And just in case some of you are wondering about the noise performance, here is an ISO test. And this is 400 ISO. And this is 800 ISO. (1600 ISO). (3200 ISO). (6400 ISO). And finally, 12,800 ISO. Personally, I feel that I would not want to go over 1600 ISO with this camera. But in a pinch, I guess 3200 ISO is still acceptable, but nothing beyond that. And finally, I'll test to see how difficult it is to get a shallow depth of field. By combining a full frame lens with the Speed Booster XL, I reduced the crop factor of the GH5 from 2 times to 1.28 times. That's pretty much full frame, and therefore it's definitely a lot more easier to achieve shallow depth of field, at least compared with a Micro Four Thirds 2 times crop. And this concludes my test session with the GH5. you think? Not bad, right? That's what I think as well. However, I'll need to get to know this camera a little bit more better before I can give my final judgment. But for now, yeah, Panasonic, great camera. Too bad your customer service suck. So all the test footage you've seen today was shot at Chinatown in Singapore. Now the reason why I choose Chinatown is because, well, it's Chinese New Year. So Ella and I would like to wish all of you a Happy Chinese New Year!
Hi, bye bye.